Just when we thought that No Way Home was the culmination of Peter Parker's entire character arc, yet another chapter opens with Brand New Day. The last time we've seen Tom Holland as the friendly neighborhood webhead, he committed the ultimate sacrifice by having Doctor Strange use the forgetting spell by having the entire world, including the people that he cares about the most, forget that Peter Parker ever existed. Even though, now that I think about it, I think it would have been a much more easier option for him to have everyone forget Spider-Man ever existed, meaning that if that were the case, he would still keep his connections and his resources. In any case, he's found a new apartment for himself, with only just a sewing machine and his suit. He's kept his identity and personal connection from his former friends a secret for the sake of their protection, and has allowed himself to start fresh as Spider-Man, paving the way for all sorts of journeys and lessons that he can learn along the way. With previous director Jon Watts being no longer affiliated to the Spider-Man license, the directing reins have been passed down to one Dustin Daniel Cretton, known recently for another Marvel project that many of you have heard of, called Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, a movie that I wasn't the biggest fan of, but honestly, it's far better than some of the subpar slew of Marvel movies that we received as of late. Now, you know me, ever since my review of Spider-Man Homecoming, I love Spider-Man, one of my favorite superheroes of all time. Not just in comics, but in the great halls of cinema. Sam Raimi's debut Spider-Man film still holds a special place in my heart. And the Spider-Verse movies are some of the best animated films that you could ever witness. And while some of Jon Watts' Spider-Man movies are deeply flawed, I still remember enjoying the likes of Homecoming and No Way Home. We'll see how they hold up once I watch them again. For as much as I adore plenty of films of the titular character, Brand New Day is not really one of them. It's something of a mixed bag. Not to say that the movie's an abomination, although there are one or two elements in this movie that are absolutely unforgivable. It's just that it's one of those films in the franchise where the door was open for so much possibilities and challenges for Peter Parker to take, all thanks to the setup in No Way Home. And this movie goes, that's all good and all, but I want to take the shortcut, while ignoring the hallmarks of a good Spider-Man movie and adapting several issues that still plague the MCU. 4 years have passed since the events of No Way Home, and in that time span, Peter Parker is fighting crime alongside law enforcement while balancing responsibilities of his personal life and looking out for the friends that he once knew. However, things take a turn for the worse when some random citizen causes mayhem across New York, destroying parts of the Department of Damage Control and has let loose villains that Spider-Man has fought before. Turns out that civilian and many others were mind-controlled by a mysterious, shadowy cloaked figure who vows to not only destroy the DODC, but to harm those that Peter Parker cares about. And so it's up to him, alongside Frank Castle, aka the Punisher, to stop this psychic's nefarious plan. Or is it? Unless you already know who the villain or villain is, in which case this shouldn't come as a surprise to you. Before I begin my criticisms, I do want to talk about the things that the film has going for it. Of course, the acting from everybody involved is still terrific. Tom Holland is still giving everything he has into the role of Peter Parker. Though not as dramatically influential as his performance in No Way Home, his acting still carries the movie with his dimensional portrayal of a character that is trying to learn about his new formed organic web abilities, the arachnid hormones that is driving him out of control, or when he's trying to protect those that he once knew from such a malevolent threat. Zendaya is given a lot more to work with in her performance as MJ, and is able to shine in occasions where she comes across Peter, and they both exchange what things were like back in the day before the forgetting spell. And I say it's quite the breath of fresh air compared to her role as Athena, the goddess of scowling disapprovingly. Spider-Man's action set pieces are genuinely well made and visually terrific, right down to how smooth and how fluid the choreography is. Each of these action scenes display his agility and his web-slinging techniques very efficiently, particularly in the final act of the movie where he has this action scene where he goes toe-to-toe with the Hand. That being said, I wish the story took a lot more time for Peter to get used to and learn more about his newfound organic web abilities, rather than have it be a plot mechanic that he just instantly nails once we have reached the denouement, even in spite of Michael Giacchino's score that is doing so much of the heavy lifting. But now that we got some of the positives out of the way, and there are plenty, if I had to begin my problems in any way, a great place to start would have to be the wasted potential of Peter Parker's character. Peter is broke, and everyone who he's ever known, including those who work at Stark Industries, and even the bank, forgot he ever existed. And yet in this movie, he has enough money and resources to build himself an artificial intelligence, a hyper-advanced 3D printer, an inhibitor that can cancel off someone's powers completely, and has enough money to pay rent for a loft and buy flowers for Aunt May's grave. He doesn't get paid by the police. We don't see him work a job where he financially supports himself. If only he was, a photographer at the Daily Bugle, just a thought. And all of this just makes you want to ask yourself, how financially supportive and smart is Peter Parker really? He also at times isn't even consistent at being a good superhero. When faced with people who are being mind controlled, and after they are free from the possession, explicitly conveyed to Peter that they had no idea what they did or what just happened to them. Peter just doesn't tell the police commissioner what he just saw. They could just end up in prison. Peter, why aren't you doing anything to try and claim their innocence? Since you're the primary witness? What are they gonna do? Not believe you? He doesn't save a hypnotized bystander who gets hit by a taxi while the villain telepathically communicates to Peter Parker their formidability. And after many instances of being deceived by the likes of Mysterio and Sam Raimi's Norman Osborn, he still refuses to learn his lesson of trusting others and connecting the dots, and gets himself fooled by a twist villain for a third time. Many supporting characters in the MCU, especially ones that have been established in these Spider-Man movies, are just wasted in this film. Jon Bernthal, of course, is tremendous in his reprisal as Frank Castle, but the character himself, the Punisher, is basically reduced to being an oblivious, flanderized, gunslinging dolt who doesn't even so much as grow a brain cell up until the climax of the movie, and is the film's many instances of comedy relief, despite his established character in Netflix's Daredevil. Scorpion, who is played by Michael Mando, aka Voss from Far Cry 3, Far Cry 3, contributes to being nothing more than to being a cameo. The last time we see him was in the after-credits scene of Homecoming, and he finally appears in this movie. He finally gets his chance to be a villain, only to be easily defeated in a montage, and captured again after scuffling with Spider-Man for a second time, who is being mind-controlled by the villain. And you know what? Poor Bruce Banner. The man has gone through so much, and there is still things that you can do with this character, but instead the MCU just gives him such embarrassing material to work with post-Endgame. And once we do finally get to see him in his green, Titanic rage-infused glory, it's only through inconsistent and, dare I say, out-of-character means. Why does Savage Hulk attack Peter even though he's been able to subdue his anger and control his rage when he's around those who are allies since the Avengers 2012? The only time that he lashed out against another hero post the original Avengers was in Age of Ultron, where he was hypnotized and manipulated by Wanda Maximoff's spell. In this movie, he is mind-controlled by the villain, and once he is finally free from the possession, reverts back to Bruce Banner, and then later on in that same exact scene, he transforms into Savage Hulk and attacks Spider-Man for reasons. But do you want to know the worst part about this whole movie? The most inexcusable flaw of this movie that incinerates the entire plot into a pile of ash, but also does significant damage to certain characters, including Peter Parker. Many of you who have seen this movie already know what I'm talking about. But for those of you who are still dying and wanting to go see this movie, let me show you my rating first, and then I'll talk about it. Yeah, that's how bad this character decimates this story. So now that you know, feel free to click off this video and go and do something else. Because my biggest issue of this entire movie has to do with massive spoilers. So you guys, you have been warned. So let's talk about Jean Grey. Yes, that Jean Grey. X-Men Jean Grey. Dark Phoenix Saga Jean Grey. Now let me get this out of the way. Much like the rest of the casting in this movie, Sadie Sink's performance cannot be understated. She's incredibly gifted, her line delivery is solid, and she's able to hit the emotional high note. The actual problem with Jean Grey is everything else surrounding her character, because the plot hinges on her decision-making throughout the course of the script. What we know already is that the only reason why Jean Grey is able to get so far in her plan is that she is able to mind control from person to person, only within a 33-foot radius, as we eventually discover. However, the movie just ends up throwing consistency out the window, and she's able to hypnotize people from much farther distances. But all of these power scaling inconsistencies can all be forgiven if her characterization and justification for her goals makes up for a compelling piece of storytelling. Well, here's the straw that obliterates the camel's spine. Jean's motivation is to get revenge on the DODC for kidnapping her sister in the hopes of rescuing her. So, what does she do to fulfill her goal? She mind controls an old woman to drive an armored tank into the side of a DODC building, has a bomb in the tank blow up parts of the DODC facility, causing several more casualties and property damage, taunts Spider-Man and jokes about his personal life, hypnotizes the likes of the Punisher and the Hulk to cause so much more damage to the people inside the DODC, and once she realizes the fate of her sister, holds the DODC director hostage inside his private base on Roosevelt Island, and in an emotional rage, unleashes a psionic field, freezing millions of New Yorkers in their place, and threatens Spider-Man harm if he gets in her way. But it's all okay because she's just an emotional girl, and her sister was taken away from her. This hellbent psychic has endangered millions of innocent people in New York City, murdered civilians, if not more, through collateral damage, and nameless guards just doing their job, allowed certain villains in the Spider-Man Rogues Gallery to escape, mind-controlled the Hulk against his will, mocked Peter and the Punisher's trauma and all they have gone through, and she has the audacity to ask for sympathy by telling us a sob story? Look, Jean, you sweet summer child, I know that you're not the brightest bulb in the house, but if you want to expose damage control for all of the damage that they have done without the risk of being villainized by the entire world, you know who you could have asked for help? Oh, I don't know. Freaking Spider-Man, the beloved hero of New York City? The worst part about this movie is that it doesn't treat Jean Grey as this diabolical villainess that needs to be brought to justice, or at the very least killed, but as a tragic, sympathetic, misunderstood character. The movie actively wants you to sympathize and take her side when she is going out of her way to murder, telepathically manipulate, and commit arson wherever she aims to continue her plight. Topping it all off with her getting her personal therapy session from somebody of the past, telling her that the only thing that is important is that you are special, and that you are not loved only because you are special, but because you are you. Once everything is said and done, does she accept responsibility in all of the wrongdoing she has caused? Does Spider-Man have her arrested? What do you think? She gets let off the hook by Spider-Man, of all people, for putting the entire population of New York at risk, and she's allowed to roam free without being held accountable, with the blame being shifted on not the perpetrator, not the one who is causing the death and destruction, but those who let her cause such death and destruction in the first place. Guys, this is Carly Morgenthau all over again. This is Wanda Maximoff all over. Man, she's so beautiful. You know what? I take back with what I said. Wanda did nothing wrong. I find it fascinating that we're potentially going to have the third iteration of the Dark Phoenix saga in the future, and this is her first appearance in the Marvel Cinematic Universe as a frivolously bloodthirsty, deranged, sadistic, irredeemable moron who puts all of New York at risk because of a sob story. And this is all before the powers of the Phoenix corrupt her, by the way. It's been days since Brand New Day came out, and I'm getting more frustrated the more I think about it. A movie that prioritizes emotional resonance instead of in-universe and narrative cohesion. And one made worse because of the heinous, ass-backwards decisions from a villain who could have just ended this movie in so many ways had she not been a violent, murderous dimwit. But hey, at least we got the new Spider-Verse movie waiting in the wings. Fingers quadruple crossed. My name is Luke Nukem, and you, my friends, have been blown away.